I'm Rob Feenstra, Professor of Economics and Associate Dean of the Faculty in the Social Sciences here at UC Davis. And it's my pleasure to welcome you to the 9th Sheffrin Lecture in Public Policy. We're privileged this evening to be welcoming Kathleen Carley of Carnegie Mellon University for a lecture entitled Social Influence in Cyberspace. The Sheffrin Lecture Endowment was established in 2008 by Steve Sheffrin, former Dean of the Division of Social Sciences, and his wife, Anjali, on the occasion of Steve's retirement from UC Davis. Steve served as Dean of Social Sciences for 10 years and wished to make a gift to the College of Letters and Science that would support the social sciences broadly and have an impact on the university community. Thus, the Sheffrin Lecture Endowment supports an annual lecture on topics related to the social sciences and public policy that have broad relevance to our students and our faculty, as well as to the most important issues facing our state and nation. Over the past 9 years, the Sheffrin Lecture Fund has brought distinguished scholars working across the social sciences to UC Davis to share their work on topics such as healthcare reform, government secrecy, immigration, polarization in American politics, corporate finance, poverty, and evidence-based policy. Each of these talks has informed our thinking of some of the most pressing public policy issues of the day. Today, I'm looking forward to hearing what Professor Carley has to say on the very timely topic of social influence via the internet, in particular as it relates to the question of whether there was foreign influence in the 2016 elections, and more generally, this topic that we hear about on a daily basis. Before I invite Martin Hilbert to introduce our speaker, I'd like to thank the Institute for Social Sciences for organizing and sponsoring this evening's lecture. I'm also grateful for the co-sponsorship kindly provided by the Department of Communication. Finally, I'd like to show you the updated Sheffrin Lecture plaque, which has a record of all the Sheffrin lectures and where we've included Kathleen Carley's name, so it will always be here at UC Davis. Now let me call on Professor Martin Hilbert to introduce our speaker for this evening.
Thank you, Rob, and welcome everybody. I think it's very timely that we have Kathleen here to give the distinguished Sheffrin Lecture in Public Policy, because I think that topic that she's working in, social influence in cyberspace, is the most pressing public policy issue of our time, right? So we live in a world where the 5 most valuable companies on planet Earth all work in that field, right? So in case you wanted, it's Apple, Google, Microsoft, Amazon, and Facebook, right? Like when most of us went to college, it was some big petroleum companies or some banks or some 150-year-old industrial giant that shaped the world around us, and now it's not. Like the top 5 actually do that. What Kathleen, something Kathleen has been a pioneer in, and this revolution is headquartered here in Northern California. Well, to give Carnegie Mellon and many others also their due respect in their trailblazing role, this is not grown out of UC Davis, like maybe Napa Valley has, but it's here, right? And in UC Davis, we are also in the process right now of creating several initiatives. One that you probably heard, which just took an important hurdle, is the data science program, a data science academic unit in the College of Letters and Sciences, and on the graduate level. Several departments have come together, 10 departments have come together to push an effort of creating a designated emphasis in computational social science. So there are several efforts underway. And this field that we also now starting to have all these initiatives in, that's a field where Kathleen has been a pioneer in for many decades. I mean, she has been doing computational social science way before there was such a thing, right? and I think this is best reflected in her titles, in her evolving titles over the year. So Kathleen received degrees in economics and political science from MIT in 1978. So that was the beginning, right? So I think the first patent for the microprocessor was granted in 1975 or something. So she started, right, when the digital revolution started. That's when she started college. And then she did a PhD in sociology from Harvard. And then immediately joined CMU as assistant professor in sociology and information systems. And a very interesting mix, sociology and information systems. So that was back in the early 80s. And then she became a full professor of computation, organization, and society. And right now, she's leading her famous lab, the Center for Computational Analysis of Social and Organizational Systems, right? So as I said, computational social science way before it existed, way before it was actually a thing. And Kathleen's influence is not only obvious in her more than 600 publications, all of them cited, by the way, I looked it up, which is obviously impressive. But also one of the things I find most impressive, and Kathleen has been a leader with, that she also actively develops tools that she makes available for all of us. And that's been a big inspiration for me. And that was way before it became it's not even a norm yet, but we try to put our R and Python code in the appendix of our publications. Kathleen actually for many decades already went further and really produces ready-made plug-and-play systems, right, that undergrads can use. I've been using as an undergrad as well. I remember one of her software that was probably 15 years ago allows you to, the first time I saw a network evolving, so I collected network data and then you could upload it in Kathleen's software, Aura, and then she made a little video. I mean, 15 years ago, that was very exciting, right? And I saw like, wow, networks evolve. It's obvious, but you can see it and then with Kathleen's tool analyze it. And I think that's exemplary scholar in this modern computational paradigm age, that we do our research on paper and pen, but also we provide the tools. And that's been always a big inspiration for me personally. So Kathleen will talk today about a new scientific field, which she calls social cybersecurity, which aims at understanding cyber-mediated changes in human societal behavior and to build the cyber infrastructure needed for society to persist in a cyber-mediated information environment. It's an honor to have you here, Kathleen.
So thank you all for being here, for inviting me. It's been absolutely tremendous to be here. And just in case you're wondering what does this have to do with policy, let me tell you that the work that I'm going to describe was actually instrumental and was presented to the White House and actually fed into the 2018 national security policy. So this stuff has huge policy implications. All of you need to work in this area. No. Okay. So I'm going to talk to you about this work that I and my group have been doing. I'm going to focus mainly on the work that we've been doing in the social mediated cyber environment. And you can read that as basically social media, okay, or think Twitter. So as we all know, our whole infrastructure has dramatically changed in the past few years. And a lot of people are out there getting information in social media. They're communicating, they're falling in love in social media, they're finding their health prescriptions, they're getting their news, and so on. And it's really affecting everyday life in every country around the world. And in some countries, it's used for actually matchmaking. So, I mean, it's just huge all around the world. So there's this area that's been coming up. I am not used to having this behind me. Where people are trying to study, and they've looked at social media and said, well, what is it? What is it? Is it a news service? Well, from a communication perspective, yeah, it kind of is. But it got rid of the middleman, the newspapers, or at least originally it did, and news came from the individual providers, which was very interesting because for now you had lack of state control over news. Today, however, the most retweeted people and on all of Twitter are CNN, BBC, and the news media. So they are back in play. But it's also a communication device for groups to get together, to communicate, and to understand. So we're very interested in how do people communicate in this space? What are the kind of information maneuvers that are going on in it for the spread of information, for the diffusion of ideas, beliefs, motivations, and so on. And how are they being played out, and how does it affect you and I in our everyday lives? So there's this new field that has evolved to look at this called social cybersecurity. And as Martin just read to you, it's really about not just what is going on in Twitter, it's really about keeping the internet safe for us to have communications with each other without being completely controlled by everybody else, okay? So it involves a lot of technology, it involves a lot of social science. It is really a computational social science field from the get-go, and it's also a policy field. And so people working in this area are actually concerned and take deep interest in how is the technology evolving, how is it getting exploited, how are people using it and changing or changing their behavior in order to use it, and what are the policies, governance structures, laws we need to put in place so that we can, preserve this as a way of communication. Now, this particular area, you might think, well, there's a handful of people in this working in this area, right? And if I were to ask you, like, how many people are working in this area, how many would you think? Just somebody. Go ahead. You.
Yeah. So it's not totally related, but I do house research. I think it's totally relevant when we consider how social media and the skills of information on this mediated environment would actually influence people's mind to at this point.
How many people? Just a number.
In this room, right?
No. How many people work in the space worldwide?
Like 1,000 seconds.
You are good. Most people think there's only a few hundred. We actually did this incredibly detailed literature review of the area and found 11,000 people. Okay, about 800 people. Now, are those 11,000 going to keep working in it? Probably not. Okay, but it's bigger than people think, and it's a worldwide phenomenon of people working in this area. This is what the number of papers look like. You can see it exploded, and most of it has happened since the advent of Facebook and Twitter. So it's actually skyrocketed up. And this is, of course, now out of date because we have 2 more months in 2018 since we collected the data. This is what the co-authorship network of the field looks like. There's actually a central group who have worked together, or whose students have worked with each other, and of course there's other peripheral subgroups and so on. A lot of those representing a single paper saying, gee, I think something interesting is going on. It goes from law to sociology, from communication theory to electrical engineering. Many fields have participated in this particular field and area. And by the way, this does not include a single paper on privacy, okay, which is totally a different subfield. So what is the dominant methodology? Well, the dominant methodology is some form of social network analysis. Okay, now if you don't know what social network is, but I think everybody here does now, social networks has to do with communication and the interactions among actors, right? And the traditional social networks was really concerned with just, we're members of an organization, are we talking to each other, right? Or do I go to you for advice? And there's still a lot of that going on. Of course, now we think, can I get the network for every phone call in the entire world? So we think a little bit bigger now. But this is kind of the dominant methodology that's used in there. But it's kind of starting to take a new form when we look at social media and look at social influence, because we can't just look at people-to-people communication. First off, we have to remember that there's many kinds of networks that are ongoing. Now, the simplest example of that is in any organization. You have your formal organizational chart, like who do you report to? So, the undergraduates talk to the grad students, who talk to the faculty, talk to the deans, and so on. But there's also the informal one, right? Which is kind of how you get together, how you get things done. And so those always coexist. In social media, there's both formal and informal organizational networks like this as well, but there's also many other types of networks of interaction among individuals. And they cross over between multiple types of media at once. So I have the set of people I talk to on LinkedIn, the set of people I talk to on Facebook, the set of people I talk to on Twitter. Actually, I don't like to talk on Twitter. But anyway, they have many networks. And to really understand what's going on, you have to keep in mind how groups move and migrate and work between all these different networks and all these different media. Now, in traditional networks, there have been 3 kind of major phenomena, if you will, that we have millions of metrics who kind of figure them out. One of those metrics has to do with access. So this is our favorite one, degree centrality. It's one, even if you don't know networks, you know this metric, okay, implicitly. How many others am I connected to? You know, for node in the brain, how many other neurons is it connected to? The more connected something is, the more important, right? This is one of our classic measures. If you only calculate one thing, this is what you calculate. It scales well. We love it from a computer science perspective. We love it from a power perspective. We love it from a democracy perspective. It's a great measure. But the second idea has to do with path and flows. It's really saying, think of my network as a bunch of pipes with stuff flowing through it, okay? As there's stuff flowing through your network, then we could stop it if we had someone who could block it. And so this is the notion of brokerage or of betweenness. This is the idea that there are these nodes that are kind of in the middle that have control and power and influence, etc., because they can stop the flow of information or they can start it. Okay? And a lot of drug interventions and a lot of different things are designed around that. The third idea has to do with social influence. And this is the idea that you're embedded in these networks of groups, and that the more you are connected to others who themselves are connected, the stronger your influence on them and the stronger their influence on you. To the point that if you're actually embedded in two groups, each of which is densely connected, and you're in between them, you are going to be overly constrained, and in many situations will not act, especially if the two groups don't like each other. And you'll just you'll get stomachache, you'll go away, you'll get ulcers, and you'll say, I gotta get out of the situation, okay? So you'll have these different kind of, so you've got the influence, the flows, and so on. These same effects you'll see in any network system in cyberspace. You do see these kind of behaviors, but they're not enough. They're not enough to explain what we're seeing happening in social media. So we have to go a little bit further. And to go a little bit further, we want to think about, well, how is it that we really are affecting identities and affecting opinions in social media? And to start with, how did we used to do it with just newspapers? Okay? So one of the things that we found in looking at tons of different data, comparing traditional newspapers and social media on the Arab Spring, is that in every single case, when you were trying to affect the identity of an individual or a group, so you would say, this is what policemen are like, or this is what African Americans are like, or this is what Sunnis are like. If you were in traditional media, you did it through these stories that created images with good and bad things that they connected to it. So if you told a story about a policeman who was, rescuing kittens from trees and helping little kids across the street and so on, and they were a nice guy. If you told a story about a policeman who was busy taking bribes and shooting people in the back and so on, then policemen were bad. And this kind of influence through this identity construction, okay, was done with these kind of, and you could analyze this by looking at the semantic networks in the stories in these newspapers, and you would always identify that as they were changing identities, they would build these very dense networks of good and bad features around that identities, and they would be coalesced. Control over the newspapers coming from whoever was the sponsor or owner of the newspaper, and these were much stronger and more able to have more impact if they were directed at identities of classes of individuals who had a competing group and who were engaged in activities or roles that weren't commonly looked at, or you didn't necessarily find them in real life, in your everyday life, I mean. In contrast, social media is nothing like that. You're not talking about identity construction at all, with the possible exception of blogs. Instead, what you're doing is you're actually controlling behavior in social media by controlling topic groups. And you're not affecting identities. You're not just affecting the semantic network around words. You're actually literally impacting who is talking to whom, what groups are forming, and what are they talking about. And you're doing all of this at once, okay? So you're automatically in this kind of high-dimensional network space. And all of the stuff that you're going to see has that perspective, and we'll show you some examples of how that works. Okay, So influence operations in social media are done, again, like I said, by manipulating the topic group, manipulating who is talking to whom, manipulating the message. And they do that by lots of different means, and we'll see a bunch of them. But in all cases, they're dealing with topic groups. And what's special about a topic group is a kind of a dense, cohesive group that is focused not only in that they're talking to each other, but they're also sort of talking about the same thing. Now, you're familiar with some topic groups probably, like the set of you who always get together to talk about football, okay? The set of you who might always get together to talk about social networks. Those are topic groups, okay? But in social media, they take a slightly different form because they are visible to others, and others can see your topic group and elect to join or not join, okay? And they will see who's in it by the mentions of each other. They'll see whether or not you like each other by the likes, and they will see the messages, of course, by the messages. Now, that has led us to think about our traditional social network measures in just slightly variance on the theme. So instead of calling it high degree centrality, we often talk about super spreaders. These are individuals who have disproportionately, wildly disproportionate ability to get their message out. Usually they have cross-media links. They have lots of individuals who follow them. They have lots of groups who retweet them. They are on multiple different media, and there's lots of ways you can measure them. Yes, we could measure them with degree centrality. We can measure them with page rank. There's a variety of different kind of ways to measure them, but they have this ability to get messages out. In contrast, there's this other kind of idea that we call the super friend. Love science fiction, love comic books. Okay, and the super friends are these individuals who are engaged disproportionately in dialogue and interaction. So this is the individual who I'm sending messages to you, you're sending them back to me. I'm sending a message to you, you're talking back to me. We're engaged in a conversation or a dialogue. And these are very interesting individuals because we're finding them as being important in countering many of the different kind of information maneuvers. We see the super spreaders as being manipulated and used, sometimes without their knowledge, as part of these information maneuvers. And one of the core ways of doing this is through the use of echo chambers. Now, in its pure mathematical form, an echo chamber is an all-to-all connected network. But in this case, it's all-to-all on at least two dimensions. Who is talking to whom, and are they sharing the same ideas? That's a pure echo chamber. Now, implicitly, some of the things we know about echo chambers in human groups is that if your group forms an echo chamber, you kind of have this close in the ranks mentality. If an idea gets into the group, it spreads like wildfire to everyone else in the group. If the group gets excited because something's happened that attacks them or their emotions the emotions will go up really quickly. When their emotions go up, their vocabulary level goes down. They stop paying attention to outside things and they don't consider contradictory evidence. So they have strong confirmation bias behaviors. So we see all of these kind of behaviors in them. Now, topic groups themselves are close to echo chambers. They have like an echo chamberness index, if you will, okay? But they're usually not pure echo chambers. But there is a type of thing that happens in the web that creates pure echo chambers. And I will tell you, most of the web technologies that we use, YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, are paying attention to when things become like echo chambers, and they respond to them, and they prioritize things based on them. So you can exploit these technologies by building echo chambers. Okay, now the way social influence works, so this is based off Friedkin and others talk about social influence. This is the idea that my opinions, my beliefs, your beliefs are a function of the beliefs of those who you interact with. It's a very simple idea. And basically, if this is a group of us and each of us there's like 3 different groups that have 3 different sets of beliefs, and over time, their beliefs as they interact and so on, their ideas get closer and closer and closer and closer and closer together, right? This is the groupthink phenomena. We see it in any closed-in group and so on. Okay, you see that kind of phenomena happening in the web, and we can actually change the rate at which it happens, we believe, by the rate at which we make them become more and more of an echo chamber. So if I can make your topic group more of an echo chamber, you will have the social influence process will start occurring faster. But like I said, it's a high-dimensional concept. It doesn't just use who's talking to whom, it also uses who's talking about what, and are they talking about and sharing the same kind of ideas. They have to be in that kind of a space. So, in order to do this, it doesn't happen randomly, okay? You would say, well, lots of things can happen, people just randomly use things, and things just happen. Well, actually, most of the manipulation that's been going on the web has been done intentionally, and it's done through something that I call heedful interaction, okay? That means I'm aware of the network, okay? I'm attending to it, I'm attentive to it, I'm aware of it, and I am intentionally doing things to manipulate it. And we've seen instances of heedful interaction being used by individuals in real face-to-face interactions as a way to make life better for themselves or their children. But we also see it on the web, and we see it being done for good, and we also see it being done for bad. So we'll show you some examples of both of these, and I'm going to start with the tsunami example. Okay, so what kind of things can you manipulate? Well, you can manipulate what information people have. You can manipulate what resources they have access to by affecting what URLs or what things they go out and look at. You can use different kinds of strategies and information strategies, but you can also manipulate who's in the group and who's talking to whom. So there's a lot of different ways of kind of manipulating and affecting these things. So here's our tsunami story. Okay, in this case, what we're doing is we're working with Padang, Indonesia. Now, Indonesia is interesting. It's often sorry, just a second. Indonesia is often referred to as the Twitter capital of the universe because they just love Twitter, okay? They love social media in general. It fits right into their culture. And, I mean, they tweet a lot. I mean, way more than Americans do. And so we thought, it's also part of the Ring of Fire, meaning that there's always tsunamis, there's volcanoes. I mean, it's a terrible place to live. You're going to die from some natural disaster, okay? It's a mess. So we thought, this is the perfect place, if any place is going to work, to use Twitter and other social media to help the government understand where people are when, so they could increase how many people get the warning that the tsunami is coming, and they can speed up the rate. Okay, because every second here counts. If you can give them one more minute, you are going to save hundreds and hundreds of lives. So this is Padang, and all those little orange dots are tweets. Okay, from a few hours. Okay. And what this tells you is where the people are. Now, these are only the geolocated tweets, which is less than 10% in most countries. In Indonesia, it's a little higher. In Turkey, it's almost 90%. And so this is the tweets. And the idea was, by taking the tweets, we could identify a pattern of life behavior for who was tweeting where, who was tweeting from where when. We could cross-index this to their census data. Once we had cross-indexed it to the census data, we could then tell the government where the people really were, not where they lived, which is what the census data told them, by hour of day and day of week, so that they would know where they needed to focus their data, and they would also could do drills based on different times of day and know about how many people would be in the affected area. What you're seeing, and that's the time of day, day of week map. Up on the top right, though, what you're seeing, the lighter the blue, the brighter the lighter the blue, the more tweets are coming from that area. And you can see that there's 3 regions where most of the tweets are coming from on average. And what those are where the universities are. Okay, so that's very interesting. The thing is, those are kind of up in the hills, you know, so those aren't really going to be that affected by tsunamis. Okay, but this kind of gave us an idea of where they were. Facebook would have been better, but Facebook, there's IRB issues. So then we said to them, okay, look, the thing about social media and the thing about Twitter is that you have opinion leaders. You have people who are disproportionately paid attention to. And if we can find those for each of those regions, each of those different colored regions, would you be willing to send your message to them, and we could give them this little Raspberry Pi device, and they could then lead people to the shelter? And they said, it sounds like a good idea. I mean, we're sitting here in a mosque and talking to them. They're saying, yeah, it sounds like a good idea. I said, you all agree? Yeah, we all agree. Okay, here's who those opinion leaders are. Teenage girls. At this point, they said, no. No, you're wrong. It's the imams. We know, your data's wrong. Science doesn't always win. Okay. But this did show the power of doing it. And it showed the fallacy of it, right? People don't necessarily want to do it themselves. It's a good idea. Okay, so what did we show? We showed that it was possible to use the networks. You could take these networks, they could be manipulated. We did send messages to these girls during the IOWave 16 and had them lead people. It was more effective, but they weren't the imam, so it doesn't matter. So, okay. All right. So what about going on? Well, there's unfortunately a dark side also to the web. And so we could also talk about how this same technology and things could be used both for spreading good information and bad, and for manipulating people in ways you might not want it to happen. So let's look at some of those. Now we're going to look at some networks cases where we're, again, keep in mind, it gets multimodal relational data. We've now linked it out to YouTube and other things as well. But we're going to go in now and look at this kind of interaction, but with other kinds of behavior. So when we've got tweets, I just want to remind you, if you haven't played with Twitter, which I can understand why you might not have, you've got who's tweeting whom and who's retweeting whom and who's mentioning whom. You've got who uses hashtags, although we found we have to go beyond hashtags, and you've got co-hashtag usage. And that's one of the ways we get at these multidimensional networks. So this is an example of a topic group. This is actually one based on IMDb, then linked out to Twitter. And this is actually a topic group that has to do with G. Roddenberry and, who is the other guy in this? And Abrams. And this is basically a particular kind of subtopic group. To find these topic groups, we had to invent this whole new approach using bispectral two-mode clustering on this data, okay, which is very complicated. But basically, it gave us a way of finding these kinds of groups. And when you can find them, they all have these kind of special closed-in capabilities. Once we find them, we're going to go in behavior. Now, this is an example of a Twitter network. Every one of those big red dots is its own local topic group. And topic groups can be connected together. And you can be in multiple topic groups. Okay, so you're doing it. When you found these topic groups, that's kind of how the web is organized, okay, is into these kind of spaces. And within each of them, once you find them, they have their own opinion leader. They have and if they're lucky, they also have some super friends who are actually engaging in the dialogue. And if you can find who the opinion leader is and influence them, you will disproportionately influence the topic group. Okay? Topic groups have the feature that they tend to grow by events. So, for example, the Syrian expat topic group, every time something hit the news about ISIS or Syria, more people join that topic group. So people join topic groups based on events that are important to them. For the American anti-vaxxers topic group, grows every time something comes out about vaccination. Okay? So they grow based on events. Most topic groups are single language. They are not usually focused in a single country, but they tend to be linguistically very coherent in terms of the things that they're saying and talking about. And and like I said, they have this kind of feature. Some of them die out naturally over time. Some of them just keep persisting, and so on. One of the biggest topic groups that will never die are plane spotters. Okay? They spread a lot of information about spotting planes. I mean, we blew up several servers trying to capture plane spotter data. Okay. But keep in mind that on the web, it's not just people. Your nodes, and this is what drives traditional social networks crazy, right? Because that was like people to people. Well, then it was like, well, but it could be organizations to organizations. Well, in social media, people, organizations, and bots have equal standing. They're just tweeters, okay? So sometimes they have a power of an entire corporation behind them. Sometimes they're just you playing with the thing, and sometimes they've got technology. Okay, and these bots are particularly important. There's lots of different kinds of bots. They go from very simple ones, like one just tweets out, it's 5 o'clock and all is well, it's called Big Ben, okay? Other ones are very malicious. Bots can be, you can buy bots, okay? And you can use them to support and retweet your message, okay? But they can do lots of other things. There's an estimate, some people estimate that in some parts of Twitter, there are 49% of the actors are bots. In other parts, only 10% are bots. It depends on which topic groups. There's estimates that 62% of the messages that are out there on Twitter come from bots. Twitter doesn't want to hear about bots. If you want to get Twitter data and you say, I'm doing a bot study, they said, go away. We don't want to talk to you. Okay? We know there's bots. We don't care. Go away. Okay? Literally, they told us to go away. All right. What do the bots do? These are 3 different things they do. One, they find a community, they use the community to direct the community to get them resources, or for whoever their benefactor is. Second thing, they will build communities and then shape those communities to engage in certain actions. The third thing is they do is that they shape the communities and spread influence. So we're going to see examples using the Syrian expats, which is an ISIS-based one. We're going to see some Euromaidan one, and we'll talk some also about the alt-right ones. So what are we doing and manipulating? We're looking at salient messages that are passed and so on. So what's happening in this one is that they're manipulating the network by manipulating the structure of the network, manipulating the message, and manipulating the people. Okay, this is the Syrian expat network topic group. Okay, it's actually technically three major topic groups. That's the same picture 3 times. I've just colored it very differently. Once I colored it by Louvain grouping, it's just a different, I just ran a clustering algorithm on, okay? The second time it's colored by what language, by the character set. Are they using Arabic characters or mixed Roman characters or pure Roman characters? The third time I colored it by whether or not Twitter had actually suspended the users. Blue means they've been suspended. Okay, this is known as the ISIS network. A lot of this group was talking about recruitment strategies for ISIS, issues and concerns in Syria, and so on. That was happening in both the Arabic side, the English, Anglo, French, German side of things, and in the mixed one. The mixed one was mostly in English, but every now and then someone put in inshallah in Arabic or something like that. So it was basically like that. What this shows you, in part, is that one, they're separated linguistic by their language. 2, it shows you that Twitter can't speak Arabic. Okay, they were only suspending users who were speaking in English. Okay, and a lot of those were coming from anonymous. So anonymous can't speak English either, can't speak Arabic either. But what is important about this one? Well, part of what's important about this is, unbeknownst to a lot of people, is it was actually being controlled by this guy here, by the Fear Be Known bot. The Fear Be Known bot is a group of bots that are all connected. They all mention each other. They all have the word Fear Be in their title. And they basically spend a lot of time mentioning each other. What that did was it basically tricked Twitter into thinking there was a community. It formed a pure echo chamber. Twitter now thought there was a community, so it started paying attention to what that bot did. That bot then found this core imam in the other group, an imam who was known for being sympathetic to Al-Qaeda, and started retweeting, and it was already a super spreader, and started retweeting information from this imam, upping his super spreaderness quite a bit. chances are the imam had no idea this was going on, okay? Okay, it was, so it did that. That then caused Twitter, because now you had someone who was a super spreader who they already pay attention to, being retweeted by its core community, to then take anything else this bot tweeted and send it back to the entire community that was already following that imam, or that was paying attention to that imam. So now, that entire big blue group, well, they're on the left, I'm sorry, on the right, is actually getting information from the Fear Be Known bot. What does the Fear Be Known bot do now? Now it starts tweeting about this one particular site. And one of the sites it was tweeting about was a charity to collect money for the children of Syria, which was a well-known site for money laundering for ISIS. So it actually exploited the features of the Twitter technology just to cause information to move. So this just resets what I said. You form a bot, it goes into a topic group, it links onto a super spreader, makes them even more popular, tricks Twitter into prioritizing their messages, and then sends their message out to benefit some other actor. This kind of behavior is one of the most common ways of influence spreading by these particular kinds of bots. These are called social influence bots, and this was, to our knowledge, best knowledge, the first time this has been seen. These kind of bots are extremely common. They are all over the place. Even though we were collecting data on NATO and in Europe and on Syria, we pulled in, we were not trying to, in fact we were trying not to pull in, all of these groups who are being affected by similar kinds of bots. These are all basically American-based groups. Somewhere between OPSIS and the pornography site is actually Fox News and the Dallas cheerleaders. My students refuse to put them on there for some reason, but they're right in there. But every single one of these topic groups has a bot, like the Fear Be Known bot, spreading and influencing and spreading information to them. Okay. So they're all over the place. But and one of the things that they do is that they change the influence of the super spreaders. So this is just showing you that one of the ways you can see this is by looking at changes in the page rank of the individuals, looking at changes in where they're positioned relative to the other actors, and so on. And if you remove these bots, these people's influence goes down. It doesn't go away because they're attaching onto the super spreaders. Are there ones like this attached to Donald Trump? Absolutely. Are there ones attached to most American senators? We think so, yes. Okay. In fact, we know there's bots on every single incumbent who is running for election in the new election. Okay. So lots of heedful network manipulation going on here, and again, it's done by making sure they're passing salient messages to these groups. But that's not the only way to influence things, so now I'll tell you about the Euromaidan. The Euromaidan is a very interesting group. So what was happening, this is in the Ukraine before the Euromaidan revolution. And basically, you've got a group who is deciding whether or not they want to be more Russia-like or more kind of Western NATO-ish like, right? And there were a bunch of guys there, okay? And so a bunch of young guys, and they didn't even know each other. They were not even a group, okay? But they were just tweeting out messages that were of very provocative pictures of women. This Euromaidan bot found some of those and started retweeting them back, okay? And what that caused to happen was they actually then built a group, and they started introducing those guys, and they started by tweeting and mentioning some of the guys who were mentioning these images, and they would mention them. Other young men who were mentioning pictures like, oh, there's someone else that's interesting. Oh, and then they passed out, and then they mentioned them. And they built that community. And once they had built this community of people passing these very provocative pictures, once it was there, every now and then, this bot started to send out messages of the form, hey, we know where you can get guns. Hey, here's how you can fight. Here's how you can get involved in the revolution. Look at all these mean things that are being done to people. Okay, let's go kill some people. Okay, they started sending out these kind of more hate speak, more violence and how to do things, kind of violent things. So they built a group and then they tried to manipulate it. So that's one way of bridging these communities. So again, they found it, they send out a new message this time. So they literally built the community and then changed it. One of the most insidious ones we found, though, was this guy. So these kind of bots are all over the place. Like every lawyer in Moscow has one of these kinds of bots. You can actually buy services to build bots that will do things like retweet your message. Because if you really want to get your message out, what marketing will tell you is you can't just send it once. You can't just send it twice. You basically have to send it a lot, and you have to do it over and over again, and it's like, who has time for all that, right? So you can actually buy these services. Now, some of the services if you put in your messages and it sends your messages. However, some of them have a feature that they say, we reserve the right to tweet from your account. Well, most people just say, yeah, okay, fine. They're not saying they're going to tweet what you write. They tweet from your account. They tweet their messages. Now, when you get your list of the things you've tweeted, your tweet's been repeated multiple times, and most people don't bother to read what they tweeted because they think they know. But somewhere in that list will be things that these bots have tweeted from your account. Okay? And that'll be their messages. These kinds of bots are actually all over the place. And they're actually very good for marketing. But if you get one that tweets from your account, it can also be used to mess things up. So one of the things that we saw happening was there was one group, which was the evangelical women's group, and then there was an alt-right group. Both had very clear political messages. They had very clear group of people. They were not talking about the same things all. They were very different topic groups. But what happened was they bought into some of these bots to retweet their messages. Well, the ones that the evangelical women bought into, reserved the right to tweet from their account, started tweeting messages that were alt-right messages. So I'm Sarah, I'm looking at this, and it's like, Jean said this? I didn't know we believed that alt-right stuff. I guess we do. Okay? And you had this buildup of community, now all thinking everything. They preyed on something that in anthropology we call the generalized other. Okay? That is, they built up a notion among people that everybody out there knows, okay, by creating this appearance of everybody, but everybody was really the bot. But people thought it was members of their community. So they built up this appearance of everybody knows. And then they, like I said, they exploited the technology through this kind of directed mentioning approach. So you get, again, you get this happening. This kind of manipulation is happening, but it may be very difficult for you to recognize. Because unless you're really good at tracing IP addresses, which most of us aren't, you won't really know who it's really coming from. You'll think it's coming from someone you know, and it's not. The new cyborg bots that are coming down the line are actually computer-assisted, but person part of the time. And they will do things that look completely bot-like, and then all of a sudden they'll switch and look human-like. Then they will switch back. Because they are people with computer-assisted bots. They can go back and forth between them. And so they're even harder to detect. So there's been a real evolution in these kinds of bots. So how does this relate to fake news? So I'm going to tell you the story of the Black Panther movie. You guys seen it? Okay, good. It's a great movie. Okay, so we thought, look, we knew there were going to be fake news around this movie. There just had to be, right? Because there was so much hype. And so we said, we're going to track it using a totally new approach for tracking Twitter data, because we refused to buy it. And so we used this combo approach that we developed. And yes, there were fake news stories. There were at least 4 fake news stories associated with that event. And we have every single tweet, we believe, that was about those fake news stories, as well as a lot of tweets about non-fake news stories, all centered around the Black Panther movies the first week and a half. We did the same thing for Parklands, but I'm going to talk about Black Panther. So one of the things, kind of stories that came out, were ones that were sent out that basically said, I went to the movies and I was beaten up. Okay? because, you know, the African Americans in this place don't like white people coming, so they're beating us up. Okay, completely patently false, completely not true. In fact, a lot of these were fake images that had been done for other movies and for other things, okay? So that's one type of fake news. Another type of fake news were I went to the movies and my uncle went to the movie and my brother went to the movie and they got beaten up, but with an image like, you know, Hulk Hogan, Two-Face. There was a SpongeBob one, which never shows up, didn't show up on your directory. Okay? There were all these things. A lot of these had the same exact message as the first fake news, but they all had these really funny pictures. Okay? Okay. Next type of story had to do with, they show scenes that were in the movie, but weren't in the movie, and so I think I went to the wrong movie. What was this why did this happen in this movie? So trying to distort what the movie was about. And then, of course, you have the alt-right ones. So we have these 4 different kinds of stories. We looked at their trajectory of these things over time, looked at who was spreading them, who was susceptible to them, and what was the role of bots in spreading them. In the case of, and what we find is the following. First off, these kinds of stories had very different profiles. So all fake news is not creatively equal. There's very different styles of fake news, very different styles of disinformation. It has very different ways it's propagated. There's a lot of different kinds of information maneuvers for spreading these. These are only 4 examples. We also have examples from Hurricane Harvey and from Irma with the fake stories that come out during hurricane. There's always, like every hurricane that happens, there's a fake story that comes out about, you know, alligators in sewers, okay? There's another one that comes out about double twisters. There's all these standard photos that always get re-brought back in with fake news for those. But they have very, very, very different profiles. And one of the things about them is that some of them had built-in audiences and some didn't. The alt-right one had a built-in audience that it was going to. It fed into a topic group that was already there, ready and primed for it, and was hard to dismiss. Other ones did not. Okay, so if you look at their behavior over time, the only one that had a prolonged level of behavior was the one that went to the alt-right group, because that went into a group that was already ready and it was primed for it, and it kept repeating it. The other ones had very short trajectories. Now, if I take the satire one, I'm going to take it and move it over. See, that was magic. Okay, I moved the satire one on top of the fake news, the stories about I got beaten up. Now, this is one of the kind of coolest information maneuvers we've seen yet. And what's happening here was the people came out with a story. I went to the movie, I got beaten up, right? The satirist came in and said, I went to the movie, my uncle went to the movie and got beaten up, but they showed SpongeBob. Those stories started very quickly after the first fake news, completely shut down the other news. Satire was used in this case, in this kind of participative democracy approach, to completely shut down the first line of fake news. It would never have worked for the alt-right ones. People have tried satire against that. Most people don't even recognize it's satire. People try to start doing that and their backside to satire. They had no idea it was satire. No idea. Of course, it's hard to tell satire in a tweet. But, you know, so on. The fake news stories that we saw did not start in Twitter. They actually started, one of them started in a blog, one started in YouTube. Twitter was just the media that carried it out the furthest and spread it the fastest. So you have to go between things. They had very different network structures behind them, and those different network structures actually affected where they spread, how fast they spread, and whether they spread by retweets or by a replication approach. This is an example of the retweet back out of the Black Panther fake scenes, which is one with I think I went to the wrong movie. This is what happened in the movie. It was the right movie kind of thing, where they were sending out fake scenes. Those basically went out, people looked at them and said, yeah, whatever, I don't care. It's fake news, but it's kind of like the alien baby fake news. It doesn't do anything. Nobody believes it anyway. Hillary can have 1 million green kids. No one's going to pay attention, okay? So, this is the role of bots, and I know you can't see all the orange bots, but in all of these, there's a bunch of different bots. The fake news stories did not necessarily start from these bots. The bots helped replicate it, but they were not a major impact on these particular stories. They were a much bigger impact on trying to manipulate and send out the ones to the alt-right. Okay, but then this is not particularly that important. What we're seeing is that bots to actually send out fake news stories appear to play a larger role in more politically based fake news than in things dealing with movies and fun stuff, okay? But we also saw them playing a role in the hurricanes for spreading fake news that was destructive fake news, like there's people over here dying, go there and send your resources there. And that kind of thing we believe was actually used, although we don't quite have enough evidence because Twitter deleted it. But we believe that is what was actually used by ISIS to redirect resources during various crises in Afghanistan where World Aid sent in food. The tweets went out and kind of fake news stories about where the people were. And all the food was then found in these caves that were owned by ISIS. Okay. This is the bots around the fake attacks that were just complete nonsense ones. Again, they were very actively involved, and they were, again, spreading it. They were not the originators, and again, they helped to replicate it and spread it out to broader and broader communities. Okay. So what that means to me is that we actually need some new principles of networks. And the new principles that we've come up with, there's 3 of them that have to do with influence. One of those is, what it says up here, it's kind of this notion of the super spreader. This is the idea that you're more likely to hear information and to get information if you get it from a super spreader. Okay, most people will get information from these kinds of individuals. Secondly, the more you're between multiple groups, the more constrained you are. Okay, that's another particular well-known idea. But the third one is that the more that you're connected with others into the more echo chamber it is like, the more influence they have on you, and the more they will constrain and influence your opinions. So we think those ideas are important, and we have to think about how others influence us, not just how we influence others, which has been the way social networks has traditionally worked. So as a result, what we're seeing is that there's a lot of influence in cyberspace. It involves affecting both the social network and the content network at the same time. If you just try to affect one, it doesn't work. You have to affect both. And that one of the things you have to be particularly careful of is the role of computer automated devices like bots, and those are continually evolving. If you think, well, we'll get rid of them because everybody's moving off Twitter, think again. Bots are coming out and appearing in every media, social media that exists. They're not just a Twitter phenomena. Okay. So in social media, it's not just about the talk. Okay, it's not just about who's talking to whom. It's really about control. It's about both parts of it. So, that, I will open it up to questions.
Hi, I have a question about why bots were used so much in the satire fake news. It would make sense, of course, that bots were used to manipulate people in the alt-right, or that they would be trying to manipulate people with the more realistic fake news. But what was the purpose of the bots for satire?
We can't prove this, okay? But a lot of the bots we saw in the satire appeared to be Russian-based bots. And we think they were testing out a new approach, which is to pretend you're doing satire pretending what you're doing is really satire when it's really not. They were trying to see whether they could hide behind something as though it were satire when it wasn't, as a way of spreading disinformation. And so they were testing it out. So we believe this was a Russian information experiment. Okay, the Russians conduct a lot of experiments in cyberspace, and we believe that was one of them.
Thank you very much. Very fascinating. It's really like the questions you dig into is it's amazing. My question in general, I mean, if there's a person who has a feeling about that, would be you. What do you think? So, for example, with the bots or with Heatful in general, right? Like kind of like manipulating cyberspace. We hear a lot in the news about politics. You mentioned it, be it Russia, be it somewhere, or that every incumbent has a bot behind them. How much is it used by companies as well? Also, how would you divide that up? Is it kind of like from all the heatfulness or the bot activities? Is it like half economics, half politics, or do you have a feeling for that? We just hear more about politics, or is it really like opinion manipulation in a democratic sense is really what rules this kind of activity?
So I do not have a good estimation of what fraction or which kind, but definitely this is not all about politics. A lot of marketing firms use bots. As far as we can tell, every lawyer in Moscow has a bot that is trying to promote their business. So, I mean, it's amazing how many bots we have there. We're not even getting them all. So there is definitely, and there's good reasons to have them too, right? Because they also promote good, they're also used by legitimate news agencies to try to re-get their message out. But the nature of them is changing because Twitter is changing what kind of bots it is allowing, well, that it thinks it's allowing. Okay, but so there are some, but I can't tell you what percentage, I just don't know. Yeah. On this side there? You guys are quiet.
I think I'm okay. Sorry. This is sort of fractionally a science question, but that was really depressing. I mean, it's cool, but it's kind of scary. So, do you have anything hopeful to say about these bots and the present and the future and the trajectory of social media?
So I think there's a couple of really interesting things. One is the fact that participative democracy, that satire approach, could actually shut down fake news quickly. In that one case, was, I think, extremely exciting and a really good sign. There's a belief, a theory, a hope, I'm not sure which it is, among a lot of people in this area that, in fact, if we can train people, educate them about respond, don't just watch, that we may be able to shut down more of the fake news. Will we ever get rid of all of it? Probably not. I mean, this has been with us forever, right? So probably since Cro-Magnon time. But the other thing I think that's very hopeful is the fact that we have more people with technology training and social science training who are going into law and who are starting to help us write better, more savvy technical laws. I think that is also a good sign. And I think a third thing that's good about it is that, in a sense, we can still discover the bots, right? They still haven't learned how to think socially like people can. And so to the extent we can make people more aware about being aware of their social cognitive processes, I think we have a chance of getting around these things. So I'm not at all depressed about it.
So can I ask about the data? So for example, you said Twitter wouldn't let us go here, but go there. How do you get access to data, and to what extent would regular people like here be able to get access to this sort of data?
So you could do what we did. At one point we had access to the 10% feed. We found that absolutely useless. And in fact, the way we collected data was actually better than that. Basically, we're using this combined strategy that involves using both of the Twitter APIs. And we do a geo search plus a word search, plus then we snowball in key actors, and then we iterate through that very, very, very rapidly. Anybody could do what we're doing. We're in the process of writing up what the procedure is. So this is not, so anybody could do it. We purposely did not want to get the full fire hose. One, because most of the data, you just don't need it for most of your things, and that's a lot of data. And I didn't want to waste server space storing it, but also because we wanted to see what we could do that anybody could do. So.
So this was fascinating and illuminating, so thank you for helping me be more aware of my own actions and who's trying to influence me. There's a whole other side to this as well. You were focused on how bots manipulate us, but then there's like Cambridge Analytica. I know so little about it, but my understanding is that they tried to develop user profiles and understand what influences us, and then they actively interacted with us. So I was wondering if you could put some of that into context here.
So other than the fact that when Rand Waltzman tried to get me to work with Cambridge Analytica, I refused because I just didn't trust them, which turned to be a good call. So a lot of things that they and other companies are trying to do in building profiles are actually not so much building profiles of single individuals, but of groups. And a lot of those profiles are things that, with reasonable statistical background and general social science skills, you could build the kind of things. This is the kind of, these are the, so what they were really doing was in part finding these topic groups, finding within them what kind of the general key marketing issues were for those groups, and then pitting them against each other. And then they were selling that information to different subgroups. So partly saying, I will find you the groups you want to influence, then you can do that. So for example, you might think that a lot of this, and as my group always says, well, don't just look at the Republicans. It's like, well, it's not just Republicans that are affected here. It's not just that the Democrats are doing things. It's that Cambridge Analytica will actually find things where they'll find 2 competing groups or 3 competing groups, and then they will identify them to whoever wants to influence them. Because if you really want to influence a community, you don't go in and affect one group, you affect 2 groups and get them to fight each other for you, right? Which is what they did with the Democrats and the Republicans in some online topic groups.
Is there more bot activity?
Through bot and troll activity too. I don't know if Cambridge Analytica was itself selling some of these bots. I don't have any evidence one way or the other. Yeah, but they could have been, I just don't know. But they were certainly identifying topic groups. Yeah.
Your talk is fascinating. Thank you so much. My own research about fake information and fake images show that people are generally very bad at identifying fake information. So we have invested a lot of effort in terms of educating people and improving their digital literacy. But your talk illuminated the need for another kind of digital literacy, that is to discover bots from people, right? Could you comment more on, where do we even start by educating people that new literacy? How do I tell my students this is the way you tell a bot from real people? And do you think social media platforms like Twitter have the responsibility, just like they do with fact checking, in checking the bots from people?
Okay, so first off, there's lots of people out there trying to do bot detection, and a lot of the easy bot detectors are things that you would imagine. They tweet, or whatever your media is, they do it much faster than people, they have a wider geographic spread, they tend not to have followers, whereas real human beings have followers. They tend to follow more than they are followed. There's this series of things about them. And so one thing is to just tell people to look it up. The other thing is a lot of them will use old accounts, but then they will repurpose them, right? So a lot of the bots will have a female name but a male picture, or vice versa, okay? Which is kind of amusing. A lot of them will do things like they will say that they'll say they're 13, but they'll have a picture of someone who's 60. I mean, a lot of them just make really stupid mistakes, right? Because they just are randomly building these things together. Will this be true in 3 or 4 years? Probably not. But right now, there's a lot of that kind of silliness going on. And so there's lots of ways right now of spotting them. People are building various machine learning tools to find bots. It turns out those are extremely, extremely fragile. And so if you use the current online list of bots to build your own machine learning tool, you will find one class of bots, but you won't find all the others. Because they're actually subtly different by each area, and they seem to be slightly different by country. So you have to actually have lots of different kinds of techniques. So ensemble approaches seem to work better. So that's a short answer, okay? And I can point you to lots of papers in this area. You can also build a honeypot and have them come to you. So that's another thing. So do I think the companies have a responsibility? I would hate to abrogate the responsibility for all of our lives to a bunch of companies, okay? Because if they have the right to detect bots and to remove them, then they're also what you're asking them to do is to control the kind of marketing that can be done, to control how you can spread your information, and to also control what messages get sent. So I don't even know that I want them to have full responsibility for all those things. So I think we have to think very carefully about that. One thing to be aware of is that right now, in order to promulgate, the companies are stopping certain types of bots by simply changing the rules of engagement, right? Changing what kinds of things you can tweet, how frequently you can tweet. For example, that's one of Twitter's things, which will change the nature and shape of the bots. And so they have that. But they also from such a long answer, I'm sorry. They also have the right to make money, right? And if you actually shut down bots, you are reducing your ability to make money. Because there are legitimate bots out there, which are promulgating ads and promulgating the news and things like that. So, right? And if they overly shut down bots, they would be shutting down accounts of human beings too. Because there's always both kinds of errors, right? So you have to think about that. It's very important in this area, like policy-wise, to think about what the secondary implications of your policies. So like a lot of people right now are hiding behind privacy policies. Like since a whole new policy came out in Europe, okay, so we all got all these things. Well, that the similar type of privacy policy, where's Vladimir? I'm not insulting Russia. Okay, similar kind of privacy policy exists in Russia, and it was actually used to shut down LinkedIn and to actually prevent academics from talking to each other. So you have to be careful about what you ask companies and countries to do.
We have time for one more question.
Great talk to start with. So this research is focusing on Twitter because it's very conducive to collecting network data, but you said bots are on other sort of social network platforms. So I was wondering, to what extent are the patterns of manipulation we're seeing idiosyncratic to Twitter, or do you see bots using different strategies on different platforms?
So with GitHub and with some online games, some of the things we're seeing in Twitter, we also see in online games, because often you test out strategies on online games first. The pattern of they do things much more fast than humans, or they're much more spread out geographically. Those kind of features you also see like in GitHub. But really, the reason bots are effective is they're exploiting the technology's way of building groups, or the technology's way of doing something. And so they're going to be somewhat unique to each technology because their effectiveness is through exploiting kind of loopholes, if you will, in the technology.
Thank you so much.